What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It is time to review Celtic's transfer dealings in the summer transfer window, which closed obviously last night. I'm joined tonight by Chris and Declan to go through it all, and there's a lot to get through. What we're going to do tonight is talk about different parts of the business, and then we're going to rate the whole transfer window out of 10 as well. That will be our follow-on for a video I did kind of halfway through the window, rating the business so far, 4 out of 10. So we'll see where the guys are at with their ratings towards the end as well. Declan, it's a long while from you've been on, mate. What do you make? Just a general overview of the business that we've done. There's obviously been a lot of players out and a lot in.
Yeah, a lot of players coming in. It's first team ready, Paul. Something that we did again last summer that didn't work out at all. Of course, your Duffys, Laxalts, that Yeti as well. But this season it seems to have, players have came in and they've did the job right away. Kyogo's came in, Abada, Juranovic looked fairly comfortable on Sunday at Ibrox. Starfelt's come in as a mainstay at centre half. I know we're short in that position. And obviously Joe Hart's come in as the number one. So we've signed players that are definitely fit and ready for the first team. But again, in terms of planning, this summer was always going to be a massive overhaul. And when you start to look at the depth and tear it apart a wee bit, especially in central midfield, I do have my concerns there because we seem to have a lot of what you would describe as sixes in terms of your squad depth. McCarthy, Sorrow, Beaton, and probably now back to midfielder with the amount of centre halves that we've signed, which is a good thing. But yeah, in terms of your 8s and 10s, we've got nothing apart from Luca Kono and Ewan Henderson. No disrespect to them, so that worries me a wee bit. But we've brought in a lot of players. We've brought in a lot of first team ready players, which is it's always very difficult to do, and have embedded in well. I think that's down to the manager and his style of playing, what he's signed for. But again, time will tell with this. Last season we were very confident. I think I was in the video last season after the transfer deadline shut, and we were very confident with what we signed then. Then we saw how that transpired. So I won't say too much tonight because I got that badly wrong last year, so I don't want to get it badly wrong this year.
Correct. I think we all got it wrong after last summer's transfer window. We're not going to rate the signings, by the way. If we rated the individual signings, we'd be here till Sunday. Chris, we knew that this summer was going to be a lot of change, both on the park and off it. We were months behind schedule after the whole Eddie Howe debacle, which we don't have to get into here. But with this turnover of players, before we get to talking about squad depth, by the way, we are going to get to that. This number of players, the turnover of players, that does make things pretty difficult to bed everyone in, doesn't it?
I think it does, but I think it's mitigated to a certain extent, Paul, because I think you can see that the players are buying into the way Ange wants to play football. So I think that is helping to mitigate some of the turnover. But I mean, 12 players in, and I think if you think about squad players that would have had a chance to actually play, we've had 11 go out. I think 11 or 12, if my math is correct, right? If you think about the players that have gone out, and obviously a few of those are first team starters. I mean, Edward for his lack of performance on the weekend, albeit he was going to be either in the starting 11 or on the bench, and then Christie had been playing well up until he left. So, and obviously Ayer would have been a lock to start at central defence, if he was still here. So I just think it is mitigated by the fact that, we've got some good players in and Ange is already getting something from them and they're already making active contributions. The concern will be, can the squad at the depth and however each Celtic fan perceives it last between now and essentially January and the next Rangers game? Can we stay active in most of the competitions? That's really going to be the telltale sign. I agree with Declan 100%. And when you pull up the graphic, there's nobody to back up Rogic and Turnbull. You would essentially be forced, if you could get McCarthy fit, to play him and then put McGregor in a more advanced role so that you can give Rogic and Turnbull, and I would say the former in Rogic, he's not going to be able to play 2 games a week for the next 8 weeks while we're actively competing in the League Cup, and then the Europa League. It's not going to happen. So that would be my concern. I think to your question, we're mitigated right now just based on how well those players have come in, and I'm really keen to see, Carter Vickers. I'm keen to see if Liam Scales gets some playing time, and also our new Greek striker, Jack. I can't pronounce it.
Just call him Georgius, Chris.
Just call him Georgius. There we go. So I think Paul's got the pronunciation down pat. But I'm just really excited with the quality of the signings, and I think that's obviously what we're going to go on and talk about from an overall perspective, Paul.
Yeah. Before we get to squad depth, I think one man that's come out of the transfer window with all his credit intact so far is the manager. The work he's done so far, particularly in an attacking sense, has been really good. I know we're 2 league defeats already, which is a bit of a blow, but I think we can all see what the manager is doing. Declan, before I bring up this graphic that I think everyone knows some stuff already on it, in what areas is the Celtic squad stronger now than it was last season? What areas of the pitch?
I think if you look at the right back position for starters to go through it, probably goalkeeper. I would say that we're a lot stronger with Joe Hart in there in the sticks, just to maybe that he conducts himself in terms of giving orders to that back four. I would say we're stronger there. In terms of the right back position, Frimpong at times for me just wasn't in a flat back four, a right back, so that was always a concern. And obviously we brought in John Joe Kenny, so if we maybe go from January time, I would say we're stronger in there with Juranovic in and a revived Tony Ralston. Probably at centre half are a lot stronger, Paul. Welsh made his breakthrough into the team last year, but again, Julian was in and out of the team, and then we saw the Duffy and whatnot there. So probably at centre half are a lot stronger now. We've got a bit of depth in there. We've got 2 players for each position, so that's a positive. Left back still, still found wanting. Kyogo's a very different player from Alton Edward. We've obviously, I would say, we've replaced what we're getting Odson, but a very different player in terms of when you're under the cost, like a game like Thursday night last week, when you're maybe needing a player to hold up. I don't know if Georgius will be able to do that for us. I would hope he'll be able to do that for us. Probably in the right wing as well. We've got that depth, and that was something that was really wanting last season. Whenever Forrest got injured, there was nobody. We were playing Christie out there, and it just never seemed to work. And again, when the manager came in this year, Postecoglou played Christie on the left-hand side, and he thrived there, especially that Dundee game. So probably on that right-hand side, I would say we're a bit stronger. Midfield, it's players that we already had. Midfield's my biggest one, and Celtic fans, mixed emotions today from that transfer window, because I think midfield's the biggest wanting issue. The left wing, obviously Elyounoussi we had in last season, who was terrific. One of the best out of a bad bunch. Michael Johnson, you can't really count on as of yet. Don't want to go too harsh on him, but his injury problems have been a real issue. Brought in Jota again. It's bringing him in. It's a loan move, but that option to buy is there. I think that's really crucial in some of these transfers that we've made. That option to buy is something that we just not did. We've just not prepared for the future well enough. So down the right hand side, I would say we're a bit stronger. The left-hand side, we've not really did a lot there. I know Skills has come in the left-hand side, and obviously Jota's come in as a kind of straight swap for what Elyounoussi would be. But down right back and right wing, we'd probably say in centre half, and obviously in goals are the positions that I would say we've really strengthened in.
Yeah, I agree that the areas that we're stronger in there, as you've brought up, Declan. Chris, I'm bringing up the graphic again. The areas that jump out to me, and Declan did allude to them there, are left back and midfield. I think the situation at left back, we've yet to see Liam Scales, obviously, and this is a difficulty at this time. You can't judge a lot of these players because we haven't seen them. But I'm really worried about left back, and as you have both talked about already, the depth in midfield is just non-existent. Chris, you mentioned that Tom Rogic. Is Tom Rogic going to play like 2-3 times a week from now until January? David Turnbull as well. I mean, I think he's looked slightly better in terms of fitness this season so far, as the whole team have in comparison with last season. But you've just got to worry about those two in the engine room week in and week out from now until New Year. I know that McCarthy's there. He has injury problems of his own. So if he comes in, McGregor can move up one. If Sorrow has to come in, I think that's a real drop in quality from McGregor and even then McCarthy. And I think left wing is a huge worry for us. I think we've got to hope that Jota hits the ground running. Unless we're going to resort to this sort of setup we've seen before where we see James Forrest switch to the left-hand side a lot, which I don't think gets the best out of him. I think those are the big weaknesses in that squad.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Paul, 100%. And I mean, McCarthy's had his injury problems, but you've got to, I guess, I'm a glass half full kind of person, so I'm really hoping that he does get fit, because Turnbull didn't play football for the better part of 12 to 14 months, right? So yes, his fitness is back, but you could see that even in the quantity of games that he's had to play this season, and we're noticing too, to Declan's point about his fitness, he's lasted 90 minutes in more and more games, whereas last year you would see Lennon would yank him off after 65, 70, maybe 75 minutes at the most. So you can definitely see his fitness has improved, but I really felt he laboured in the second half in the Rangers game, just coming off the European night 3 nights before. So that's got to be a concern. And like I mentioned earlier, Rogic is not going to be able to play 2 games a week, 90 minutes in each game. So there's definitely going to be some shuffling. You could certainly see Joe has said he can play left or right and even in the 10. So we don't like it as Celtic fans, but the reality is now that the window is shut, this is the squad that we have. I think Ange has proven he can get the most out of players even when they're not playing out of position. Look, let's just be honest here. Kyogo, you lose so much when he's not through the middle as a number 9. But he made a clear cut. I could have finished that in front of the net when Edouard missed that on the weekend, right? And that came from a beautiful through ball. Kyogo's so intelligent. He finds the space. He slips Edouard in. It should have been a goal. It wasn't. Hindsight, wonderful. But that's ultimately what I think we're going to see. We're going to see rotation of the squad that we do have through potentially some unfamiliar positions. And certain players are going to need a rest, because we're going to play a lot of football in the next 3 months until the window reopens. But I do agree with Declan. Really delighted to see that we have the option to buy both, Carter Vickers as well as Jota when their season-long loans are up. And that's not the type of prudent business that we've done in the past. So if they work out as you hope and they're first-team starters, at least we have the security of knowing that we can buy those players. And the club made almost £55 million in our outgoings. I don't believe we spent anywhere near that in our incomings. I didn't have time to tabulate how much we spent this summer, but if I was to guess, it's probably in the region of about 30 to 35 million, all things being told, between, the loan signings and our permanents. So club, yet again, have done good business, fiscally responsible. I don't think you can really complain when you've brought in 12 players and about 7 or 8 of them are likely going to be in the starting 11. I have a hard time not feeling good with what the board and Don Mackay have done for Ange and the supporters. Are we missing players at certain positions? Absolutely. Do I think we can live with it short term? Yes. Long term? Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think the difficulty is bringing in this volume of players was always going to be difficult. But Declan, I think we've seen on Sunday the real weakness in the team was midfield. And when the manager went to the bench in the second half, all he really had to change it was Tom Rogic. Sorrow come on as well, but as I said, I think Sorrow's a drop in quality from the likes of McGregor and Turnbull, and Christie was obviously involved on Sunday as well, and he's gone now. But thinking ahead, I mean, that midfield area is so weak, and we can already see the problems that's caused us, and we're only 4 or 5 games in.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying, Paul, we've got Sorrow, we've got McCarthy, Beaton will probably make that step up to midfield. But again, they're all very similar and they'll play the 6. So then you're going to move McGregor out of position where he's going to be, whether he goes into the 8 or the 10. You're going to have to reshuffle it. And it's something that we want, that consistency, something that we didn't have at all last season. something we've had in early parts of this season. It's worked really well. With the back four not changing at times, the midfield has stayed the same. Get the best out of probably Turnbull, switching from that 10 to 8 in that 3 just looks a lot more comfortable in it. But when you look at the midfield and the breakdown of it, as Chris said, Brodzic, we don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what the package is going to be. But, probably for 4 years now, we've not had a consistent, maybe 3 years, Tom Brodzic in the Celtic team. I'd love him to be back to his form, but again, he's just not that type of player. And then you start to tear it apart. If you get an injury in there, we're in serious, serious trouble. And Liam Shaw, who I thought was very good in pre-season, thought he was a good player, but we've not played them too much, and that would worry me. No, he's not been involved at all. And again, we've got Luca Corner there and Ewan Henderson, who won't play in the B team, still be involved in the squad. They've not been out anywhere on loan. Mm-hmm. So I would assume that those two are the backups in those positions. Now, Ewan Henderson, I thought, played very well when he came on last season against Lille, played on the left-hand side in a kind of 4-2-3-1. But again, you're taking this gamble, and I don't know why we continually want to take the gamble when the prize at the end of the season isn't just the league championship, it's 40 million quid and getting into the Champions League. Why we want to take the gamble? Yeah, all the arguments about it's a rebuild, can't do it in one window, totally get that. But the McCann deal yesterday, he was under our nose. Yeah, I know there was the talk he wanted to go to English football, but you're looking at two players in the league that would have added a bit of depth to your squad. And Ferguson at Aberdeen, McCann at St Johnstone, and we don't touch any of the two of them. And let a guy go, and in Cham, I know there was a lot of talk around him not wanting to be at the football club, but you need to replace guys like that. And those positions, especially if you're looking at that midfield three of the 8 and the 10, it's Connell, Henderson, and again, you're putting an onus on young players and the manager really having to develop them and get them into that level. Whether they can do that or not, Big Man so far has probably been a miracle worker. Whether they can do that towards January, I know there's been a lot of talk around G League signings and whatnot, but got a lot of football to come before then. An injury in that midfield would really, really bring me a lot of concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to touch on Jake's comment that I brought up a couple of minutes ago about using Giakoumakis or Ajeti as a 10 deep line centre forward. I don't think so. I don't think Ajeti's got the legs for that. There's far too much defensive responsibility placed on a player playing in that position, and Giakoumakis doesn't look like he's got the build for that either. To me, he looks like an out-and-out number 9. He's very stocky. Doesn't quite look like he'd have the mobility to play in that position. And I don't know if that would suit the manager's style at all. I know that we have these two midfielders who play more advanced, and one goes up and effectively becomes the 10. But the manager's all about wide play. So I don't think we want to take anything away from the wide areas in order to fit an out-and-out number 10 in. Chris, I just can't shake the feeling looking at that squad, and as Declan says there, that we're 1 or 2 injuries away from disaster. And you think about who we've lost in midfield from last season: Brown and Cham and Christie. Okay, last season, what did some of those guys have to offer? Not a lot, because everyone performed so poorly last season. But all we've brought in midfield is McCarthy. So that, as Declan says, the qualities we've got in midfield are skewed towards defensive qualities, and we've just got nothing in there, and that just leaves us open to, if we get an injury or anything else that can happen throughout the course of a season, we could be in trouble.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue. It's for lack of a better term, it's a calculated risk, right? It's a massive overhaul. 12 players coming in, 10 or 11 going out. So yeah, squad size is neutral, but we have lost some of the depth, I guess you could say, that we did have, particularly in that midfield engine room, right? And we've all seen the way Ange plays football. That front six is so key to how we break teams apart. I guess one of the things he's going to have to get comfortable, if there was one challenge that I'm looking forward to seeing how he manages, is we're going to demolish a lot of teams at home this year. That's a fact, right? But the way we play, the tempo we play, the low block is not going to be good enough against the way Ange sets up his team. So what I'm curious to see if he does is he's going to have to rotate potentially 2 or 3 of our maybe normal starting 11 to give them a rest to reduce the risk of injury. That's the calculated risk, right? Can I rest certain players? Can I give McGregor a day off and can I play Sorrow? Yes, maybe you drop off against higher opposition. But if I know I've got a big European game midweek and we're playing a Dundee or a St Mirren or a Dundee United, no disrespect to those teams, but chances are we're going to put 3 or 4 goals past them and be able to comfortably see out the game. That's going to have to be the way he's going to have to approach it, Paul, in my opinion, especially with the midfield, that midfield core. And, great comment by John Kane there. It will take 2 more windows, right? Because undoubtedly in January, I would expect you will see 3 or 4 more faces come in. And then next summer, if there's nobody who's at the end of their contract and they're leaving, you're probably looking at another 5 or 6. Right, then you're looking at a squad size of about 27, 28 players with serious depth in every position. But the carrot in front of the players is win the league, automatic Champions League qualification, and it is a substantial pot of money where you can really invest in some top quality players when you're bringing in that last 4 or 5. That's the way I think Ange will have to approach it.
Yeah, I think there is definitely work still to do in January, as you said, and maybe 3 or 4 faces can get us much closer to where we have to be. I feel like we've talked a lot in the opening 20 minutes about the lack of depth in certain areas, Declan, but let's make it a wee bit more positive. Some of the signings so far have been absolutely superb. Who has your signing in the summer been so far?
A bit mixed in this because, I think for a lot of football managers, when they come into a new club, the goalkeeper is imperative. It's their man that watches a lot of play. He dictates what the back four do. He gives them the instructions. So one would be Joe Hart, but undoubtedly Kyogo Furuhashi. He's just been such a breath of fresh air. As I said, he's a very different footballer to Odsonne Edouard. He likes to make those runs in behind and get into the areas. And I just think he's going to be a star for Celtic. So for me, it has to be Kyogo because from what I've seen of him, and even the manager, again, that was just refreshing for him to come out after the defeat on Sunday and say, I got there strong and should play him through the middle because they trust him through the middle. And again, that shows the relationship that he has in the bond between him and his players. So Kyogo, but I think Joe Hart's going to be a very important player for Ange Postecoglou because it's very bottom of the spine of the team, and it's everything that he probably tells them through training that goes through him. And I've saw his experience, in the Alkmaar game, coming out and giving instruction. But Kyogo for me.
Yeah, I think Joe Hart has been an important addition for us, but it's Kyogo Furuhashi for me as well. So infectious, such an intelligent player. I think if he can get a run of games through the middle, a proper run of games through the middle after this international break, there's absolutely nothing stopping him. Chris, I've got no problem with turning this video into a Kyogo love-in, but who is it for you?
So I of course I'm going to agree with your sentiments, but you want to know who I think which player has the biggest ceiling and completely untapped potential is Abada. He is just out and out raw talent. You can see it, right? When Forrest at times over his Celtic career has been a fantastic servant to the club. But there's something about Abada when he wants to play. So this is what I mean about his ceiling. When he wants to play, when he wants to beat a man, and I don't blame him for really a lot of. He did see the ball on Sunday. Like Celtic, everything Celtic did was down the left side of the park, right? He barely saw the ball, and if he did, he wasn't really looking to either attack or he just didn't feel he had the space to attack. And he's 19 years old, and he's the player that really excites me because in flashes you see him and you think, oh my goodness, he is going to terrorize people for a long time to come. But obviously for immediate impact, Kyogo is just unbelievable. Like his intelligence off the ball, he is a lethal finisher. If he stays healthy this year, he scores 35 goals. Easy in all competitions. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I think he's got that potential as well. I just want to touch on Ewan's comment there. Can Jota be the new and young version of Lubo? I think if he's half as good as that, we'll have a good player in our hands. Declan, let's come to the rating. Out of 10 overall, everything we've talked about, the positives, the negatives, all the business that we managed this summer. How do you rate it out of 10?
Yeah, a lot of players so far have come in and have settled in no bother. Abada, Kyogo, we've had all the stuff around takes players time to settle and whatnot. The excuses have been there, but majority of players that Ange has brought in, and even Juranovic, who we've only watched in one game so far, out of position, looked very comfortable at left back. So had we got that wee bit more depth in midfield, it would be very much near a 9 or a 10, but probably a 7 or an 8. I'm quite happy with the overhaul that we've brought in, the quality that we've brought in. We've brought in first team ready players, so a 7 or an 8 probably, I would say.
Chris?
Well, I was going to go for 7.5, so I guess Declan teed me up there for a home run. So yeah, 7.5 for me. I mean, the board obviously have to, and I know a lot of Celtic fans don't like this, but there has to be an element of fiscal responsibility for a club our size. Yes, we're a massive football club, but we just don't operate on the same kind of money that your Manchester Uniteds and your Real Madrids and your Barcelona. Look at what Barcelona have done to themselves with what they did with their wages, right? They're now in a catastrophic financial position. So let's not be grateful that we're not there, or like the former Rangers football club who went bankrupt by breaking rules and spending money they didn't have, and so on and so forth. So I'm grateful for that. Obviously, I can agree with Declan to a certain extent. It would be nice to have maybe invested a little bit more money. But at the end of the day, we got rid of some players who just ultimately didn't want to be here anymore, both based on their play, based on their comments. So I'm glad we got those out, and we've made some financial gains that we did obviously reinvest. And you would hope, given the outs compared to ins from a money perspective, that money will be then available to Ange come January to further bolster the team. And those two players that we spoke about, the option to buy them permanently, that's huge for me. So 7.5 out of 10 for me, Paul. Where are you, Paul? Are you up from 4?
I'm up from 4, no doubt get slaughtered for this though. In the comments, I'm trying to stay away from a 7 because I think 7 is the sit on the fence
Too lucky.
answer.
Too lucky, the 7.
Aye, so I'm going 6.5. I think we've signed some good players. I think, as I say, it's difficult to get this volume of players in and the volume of players out that we've got as well. So I accept there's obviously logistical challenges in there, but I just can't escape when I look at that squad thinking we're far too weak at left back and we're far too weak in midfield, and that vulnerability and lack of depth in midfield already hindered us the other day at Ibrox. And I just think we've taken quite a big risk in trying to get from here to January with that lack of depth in midfield and the lack of quality, I would say, at left back. I accept that Scales is there now, and he might come in, and if he plays at left back, he could take us by storm. But I'm just not quite there yet, and that's the difficulty with doing videos like this. You can't judge a lot of these players because you've never seen them.
Yeah.
I think as the weeks and months go by, we'll have a much better gauge of where we're at. But I am going 6.5 for now. Any other business we want to talk about? Chris, you've mentioned a couple of times the importance of having options to buy at the end of these loan deals. Do you think we could maybe do a Jack Hendry and buy someone next summer and sell him straight on for double the money?
Yeah, that was unfortunately, I think if you were going to really highlight one thing we didn't do well, is we should have retained, well, we shouldn't have even offered the option for him to be sold for 2 million, right? We should have had him back at the club, but maybe he could have played. That's the other point, right? Versus sell him on. But yeah, that is definitely some money that Celtic left on the table with the way that they dealt with that contractually. But I think that's the only thing from a financial standpoint we didn't do well. We got close to 30 million for Ayer and Edward. I don't know if you can really, coming out of a pandemic, feel too bad about that.
Yeah, we did do well to get that sort of money for those players, like in the late stages of their contract. Declan, just to round us up, it's good to be feeling positive about going back and watching Celtic every week, innit?
Yeah, it is. Just back in that question that you said there, 4 months in front of you before January, I would like to see some kind of position appointed around head of football operations, director of football,
Absolutely.
somewhere in there. We brought in 12 players, which is great, but the manager's already made apparent that we're short in terms of bodies within the building that are tearing apart player performances and looking towards new signing potential. I don't know what the process has been involved in what we've did so far this summer, But that's something that I think the club seriously really need to look at, and maybe again himself. I know he said that he's quite happy with what he's got there, but whether or not there'd be any more coaches that he'd fancy to come in and just to become that wee bit more comfortable himself. So with respect to John Kennedy, Gavin Stanton, Stephen McManus, who appear to be doing a good job at the moment. But in terms of staff, I think that's something that we really need to target. But yeah, it's positive. It's good to be watching a Celtic team that, you know, make you happy and make you look forward to the weekends again. And long may it continue, and hopefully just after this international break, I think he's a manager that will learn from that first Derby defeat, and we can try and get a run of games together in the League Cup and see how we get on in the Europa League. But yeah, it's you know, I think for everybody's reaction probably when Eddie Howe was, you know, were told he wasn't going to come, everybody was in a down run. What Postecoglou's did in a very short space of time has been remarkable. So we wish him all and every success, and we hope that he can bring success back to Celtic Park. And I still firmly believe that Ange Postecoglou will bring success back to Celtic Park.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a good point there about off the park recruitment. I would like to see us get a director of football in as soon as possible. I think it's something that could really have helped us this summer with the volume of players that we had to get in and out, and to help the chief executive, who's coming from a different sport, to have a football guy there who could have directed all that stuff. I think it's effectively been the scouting team that was already there and the manager that have really sort of led the recruitment. So I think if we can get one of those appointed, it'd be interesting to see what kind of change that has to our January recruitment. That's all we've got time for tonight. Like this video, comment with your own thoughts below. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back after the international break for the build-up to Voss County. See you then. Cheers.